Then the other thing that people had, this was less on the Instagram poll that we did, but way more on the in the realms of discourse that is Twitter, where the intellectuals were like, why is there so much Punjabi? And I thought this was supposed to be sound of the nation. I was like, where are they getting that? But it is in the tagline,
It
sound
is
of
in
the
the tagline,
nation.
yeah.
And they're
Yeah.
like, this one woman, I forget her name. Oh, Nida Kirmani, of course. She was like, there's Punjabi. Okay. No, she said there's Shini, I think is Hassan Rahim, the language he was
Asin
saying it.
Rahim's native language, correct.
There's
Yeah.
Balochi, there's some Urdu. But then what about 8 other languages? Like she had like not even 8, like 20 other languages. Why them? Why not
There are
them?
20 other languages. So
And
let's do a now that's what we call Coke Studio Volume 40, where there's like 50 songs on there, and it's like
yeah,
sab ka kota pura hoga.
yeah. And but people
Uh,
did say, why so many Punjabi songs? And
Look, I think I can acknowledge the fact
okay,
that there are disproportionately more Punjabi songs in this season than any other language. But I don't think that it's some sort of like nefarious sort of scheme
yeah,
for like Punjabi hegemony and like,
dominance.
cultural
Yeah,
dominance kind of thing. I don't think it's that nefarious. I just think that it's maybe a proximity thing
sure. Yeah.
because,
It's
Zulfi
Lahore.
and, this, it's Lahore. Yeah, it's
Yeah,
Lahore, bro.
yeah,
So so I think it's just that. I think it's maybe more convenience. And also we should really not expect sugar water companies to, equally represent,
yeah. Because
the
that the
demographics
question,
and like cultures of like is tarah to phir baat, then you should be like, okay, why aren't we talking about like other issues, and why isn't there a song on inflation, or why isn't there a
yeah,
song on political dynasty, you know what I mean? So like then it's never ending. Why do you
yeah.
start on language and end on language? I'm sure there's plenty of non Punjabi or like diverse musicians on there. So why is the singing part of it given more preference than like the musician parts of it?
Yeah,
That's also
yeah.
uh yeah. I mean,
This
I
this
can agree.
opinion,
Yeah, go ahead.
this opinion raised the unanswerable question that is that people I think don't have the right answer for is, what is Coke Studios' job?
Hmm.
Coke Studios' job is not representing Pakistan. Coke Studios' job is, this is an ad for Coke. At the
Yeah,
end of
it's
the
making
day,
money. It's purely profitable. Yeah,
yeah,
it's a profit venture,
yeah,
and expecting like a profit making corporation as humongous as Coke to suddenly be like, we are now like this art
yeah,
establishment, or
yeah,
this art institution. No, like
yeah,
stop expecting that.
yeah.
I don't
I
understand
think
that.
the reason Coke Studio is good is because Coke Studio wanted a good campaign. So they hired great people, and those people did what they wanted to do.
Yeah,
But yeah, like no one was telling Zulfi, oh, you should be like representative of Pakistan's population. No one told Rohel Hayat, oh, maybe go to Turkey. It was like, Rohel Hayat, you're doing it
yeah,
for Coke Studio. He's like a bucket of money. And he's like, I'll do
yeah.
this, I'll do that. And it's just one guy just making some decisions. So I don't think there is any insertion point unless Zulfi decides, like
Mm,
Zohib Kazi did, where he was like, "Oh, we'll go to like these far-flung areas of Pakistan, get
sure.
their sounds." That was a specific decision made by one person in one season of Coke Studio,
Yeah,
um,
yeah. And that
and nobody
decision
gave
is
a
like
shit.
a
By the way,
more.
nobody liked it. Like
Yeah, exactly.
people liked
That
it, we
was
liked it, but it wasn't
sure.
like ultra popular.
it so Zohaib's decision was, it came from like, it was a philosophical decision, right?
Yeah,
So he was basically like, we're going to go to these places because there are like power dynamics when it comes to like being in a studio and all these things. So he's like, okay, I'm going to go to like these places, indigenous musicians,
yeah,
indigenous places and stuff. And that was it was basically a philosophical question that was answered through a season, right? Ab wo Coke doesn't care. Coke
yeah,
doesn't care what you do. Bring in the views, represent the brand well,
yeah,
and you'll get another season. It's really that simple for Coke.
yeah,
Um, so yeah, I mean, we can dissect it. The intellectuals can sit and dissect
yeah.
what was missing, what wasn't missing. But at the end of the day, it's Coke Studio. It's not like Napa or like, we're
Sure.
not like
Yeah, it's that thing
So
where, Coke Studio, since it has started, has been positioned as this savior of Pakistani music, which is not something that it's trying to do, nor something it should have to do. Like, you can't expect a brand to save your dying culture if that's what
sure,
people are hoping
sure.
from it.
That's interesting, and I think that you'd also mentioned this podcast is going to go on longer than we anticipated. But um, you had mentioned you had made a demarcation in music. I think you called it the third wave of Pakistani pop music or
Oh, yeah,
something.
yeah, yeah. Yeah,
This
I
one,
call this the third wave. Yeah.
third wave. So the first one was
First one was the early
Nazia.
90s. So I call that, so someone had that thing. So the
Hmm.
Zia period is pre first wave. So the first
Okay,
wave is the
okay,
90s after Zia.
sure.
Pre first wave has Nazias and Vital Signs, Barbarians, maybe with, Asad Ahmed. Um, and then there's the 90s, where there's a lot of people coming through.
Yeah.
There's the Pepsi sponsorships and Junoon and a bit of Vital
Hmm.
Signs and Awaz and all those people.
Hmm.
Then that dies down, I think, towards the Nawaz Sharif era. Then Musharraf does his thing where he has the music channel. So that's the second wave, where Indus Music, MTV Pakistan, later
Sure.
ARY Music, the music, they all come out. Explosion of bands from where we got Zulfi and
Hmm.
Atif.
Hmm.
Um, and then that died down because terrorism. So usually then we skipped a decade because terrorism. In that
Yeah.
decade was
Yeah.
only Coke Studio, which was very popular
Yeah.
first 5
So
seasons.
this is basically what I wanted to talk to you about. Is like my demarcation for music is what you're saying. Like it feels like there's so I'm not counting like the 90s era, but there's a very clear demarcation of uh pre-terrorism or like during like sort of I guess you call it zarbe as pre-zarbe ab post zarbe as, right?
Sure, sure.
Right. So there's like the sound, and so maybe what Rohail's Coke Studio was trying to do was in that time is present the Sufi image, the
Okay,
moderate
okay.
wala, image that we're love peace loving and we're all
Yeah,
about
yeah,
like,
yeah.
culture. So I feel like a lot of that sound is a reaction to the global impression of
Sure.
our country. And
Yeah,
so after the imminent threat of terrorism had kind of died down, then what do you do?
yeah,
Right? Then where does the sound go? When there's no existential threat on your life, then your sound is and your songwriting is very different.
sure,
Then you get
sure.
songs, then you get artists like Manu and Abdullah
Yeah,
Siddiqui, and
yeah,
the topics also change
yeah, yeah,
dramatically.
yeah, yeah.
So for me, I feel like that's a big like kind of marker. And so what we're seeing in this season's Coke Studio is the kind of that is also a big shift
Mm,
in that there's a post-terrorism. This is like music post-terrorism, I guess.
sure, sure.
And you could also look at this like we could have an entire like podcast about like Faris, for example. But like Faris's pre-terrorism and post-terrorism songs are
Yeah,
basically the thesis for the sound or like the headspace in which musicians were in
yeah,
that kind of lost decade.
yeah.
And then
Awam Jawab De
here,
versus the
yeah,
past 3 years, maybe, of Faris.
exactly.
Mm.
So his past 3 years are a lot more like hedonism,
Flexing.
debauchery,
Yeah,
flexing. So
yeah,
a lot of music is like in that direction, right? So there's
yeah,
a lot of
yeah.
like hedonism, a lot of like debauchery, a lot of
In
like
the present,
having
sort of.
fun.
Yeah,
Yeah, having fun.
yeah. I
So I
didn't think
think
about
that has,
the I didn't think about Coke Studio being like, well, it makes sense because music and artistic productions are always a reflection of the time they're in.
yeah, and we know Ruhail and his, I don't say like political like affiliations, like or who he like associates with most, but you can understand that he also ascribed to that sort of worldview of like
Sure.
we have to represent Pakistan in like a
Yeah.
very peaceful kind of way.
Yeah. Yeah. Or like our history is like way deeper than what we're seeing here, and there's like a lot of good values in the
Yeah,
history that might
yeah,
not be
yeah.
reflected in the news. Yeah, that makes sense. And also the rail obviously coming from the Zia era.
Right.
That
And the audience also, I feel like after like 13 seasons of talking about like how great our culture is, we were also like, "ठीक है," like what about now? What
yeah.
about now? We're not like we don't have to prove. Also, this whole like cultural shift of like why do we have to prove to high like bigger world powers that we're like peaceful and like
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
the
Yeah.
model minority and that kind of thing. So that view also changed. So Coke is like the last person to get the memo, I
Yeah.
feel.
Yes.
in all of this.
Yeah.
At the end, they're like, okay, so this isn't working. Let's do something new. I don't know what it is.
Yeah.
And then this is what we get.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's good.